Welcome everyone, and thank you for reviewing this recorded presentation on the request for application process for the Childcare Capital Construction Funding Program, also known as 4CFP. This grant is being administered by the Office of Children and Family Services and the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York, also known as DASNY. The Childcare Capital Construction Funding Program is a highly competitive program, and it is anticipated that the full allotment of funds will be awarded during this application cycle. The number of awards will depend upon the total of numbers received as well as the score awarded to each application based on their responsiveness to the criteria set forth in the request for applications, otherwise known as the RFA. Therefore, it will be important to note that in addition to attending this webinar, applicants should review the RFA in great detail as well as the frequently asked questions prior to applying. Disclaimer: this applicant webinar is for informational purposes only. The information provided is intended to provide a general guidance with respect to the application process and the Child Care Capital Construction Funding Program and should not be construed as final approval or disapproval of any project or project costs. Potential applicants must read the request for applications to determine if a project will be eligible for funding and if it meets the requirements set forth in the enabling Child Care Capital Construction Funding Program language and RFA. Okay, we will now go over the timeline of key events. The RFA/funding opportunity announcement was announced on December 1st. And the open application question period also began on December 1st. The application webinar has been released today on December 10th, and the deadline to submit questions is December 19th by 5 p.m. Answers will be posted by January 16th, 2026, and the application submission period begins February 2nd of 2026 to March 13th, 2026. Application deadline, once again, is March 13, 2026 by 11:59 p.m. Application scoring will be held between March 16th and April 20th, and the awards announced will be no later than May 4th, 2026. Child Care Capital Construction Funding Program Overview. Okay, we will now go over the background and purpose. The Childcare Capital Construction Funding Program, also known as 4CFP, was created to effectively address New York's continuing need for affordable, quality childcare services. The purpose of the program is to increase the availability of quality, licensed, registered, permitted childcare across New York State. All applicants should demonstrate how they would either increase the availability of quality childcare in their existing program or how they plan to create a new program to meet this objective. In order to be eligible for this grant, the childcare program must be or plan to be a center-based program. So they must either be a school-age childcare, also known as a SAC, a daycare center, also known as a DCC, or a group daycare center, also known as a GDC. Funding availability and allocations. The Childcare Capital Program was created as a part of the 2023 enacted state budget. The fiscal year 2026 state budget allocated an additional $100 million in capital funding for this program. When combined with the funds remaining from the initial appropriation, no less than $105 million will be available to eligible applicants through a competitive grant funding opportunity. It is important to know that this grant is a reimbursement grant, and 4CFP awards will be made to qualified applicants for the reimbursement of capital costs for the design, construction, reconstruction, renovation, and equipment needed to create or expand the availability of quality childcare programs. Of the total amount appropriated, up to $25 million will be awarded to municipalities, and grant awards will range from a minimum of $500,000 to a maximum of $5 million. Funding availability and allocations continued. To achieve regional parity, approximately 60% of the funds will be awarded to downstate and approximately 40% of the funds will be awarded to the rest of state. For this RFA, downstate consists of New York City, Long Island, and Mid-Hudson's Regional Economic Development Council regions, also known as REDC. Rest of state consists of the remaining REDC regions not listed in downstate. And to view the New York State Regional Economic Development Council map, please go to your RFA and you can find a link in section 1.3. The program also intends to award approximately 60% of the funds to daycare centers and group daycare centers, and approximately 40% of the funds to school-age child care centers, also known as SACs. It is important to know that the exact regional and programmatic funding targets are dependent upon the makeup of the applicant pool and the final scores of the eligible applications. OCFS and DASNY reserve the authority to adjust funding breakdowns based upon the actual applications received and the results of the review and scoring process. Review of the request for applications, RFA. To view the Childcare Capital Construction Funding Program RFA, please visit the Office of Children and Family Services website under Childcare Construction Funding Program or the DASNY website under Grants Administration. Eligible entities. For the purpose of this RFA, the following entities are eligible to apply for 4CFP funding: independent private colleges and universities, municipalities, not-for-profit corporations, public authorities, public colleges and universities. And eligible entities may apply for proposed or existing child daycare centers licensed pursuant to 18 NYCRR-418-1. School-age child care centers registered pursuant to 18 NYCRR 414. And group daycare programs permitted pursuant to Article 47 of the New York City Health Code. In order to be eligible, the applicant must have site control at the time of the application. The applicant project must have construction feasibility at the time of application. The applicant must attest to a willingness to accept families in receipt of child care assistance. Existing child care programs that apply must be in good standing, as defined as a licensed child care program in payable status that is not the subject of certain enforcement actions by OCFS or the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Eligible entities continued. Municipal, public authority, college, and university entities have the option to operate as a licensed, registered, or permitted child care program on their site staffed by their employees, or have another entity operate a licensed, registered, or permitted child care program in the facility they control and maintain. They are also required to maintain, obtain, or ensure that the outside entity operating the child care program has secured a license, registration, or permit to operate as either a daycare center, a school-age child care center, or a group daycare center. They must also obtain the license, registration, or permit to operate within 6 months of the date the certificate of occupancy is issued upon completion of the construction project. The child care program must be in operation for a minimum of 8 years after the completion of the grant-funded project. Now we're going to go over not-for-profit corporations. Not-for-profit corporations are required to maintain or obtain a license, registration, or a permit to operate as either a child care center, school-age child care center, or a group daycare center. The license, registration, permit to operate must be obtained within 6 months of the date the certificate of occupancy is issued upon completion of the construction project. And the child care program must be in operation for a minimum of 8 years after the completion of the grant-funded project. The not-for-profit corporations must also be pre-qualified through the New York State statewide financial system, also known as SFS. This part is very important, so please refer to section 3.2 of the RFA for more information regarding pre-qualification through SFS. Now that we have established who is eligible, it is time to go over ineligible entities. For the purpose of this RFA, the following are not eligible for CFP funding: public and private elementary or secondary schools, for-profit childcare programs, small daycare centers registered pursuant to 18 NYC RR 418-2, and childcare programs with the following statuses with OCFS or DOH-MH. For OCFS, the following statuses are ineligible: suspension of license or registration, limitation of license or registration, suspension and proposed revocation of license or registration, denial of application to renew license or registration. And for DOH-MH, the following statuses are ineligible: permit revoked, permit suspended, and out of business.
Now we'll discuss eligible project locations. Site control is required to prove that the applicant has sufficient authorization and control to undertake the project at the project location. Municipalities who own their project location may submit a certificate of municipal site control as applicable, provided as Appendix 2 to this RFA. All other applicants that own their project location must provide a deed in the name of the applicant organization for the proposed project location. For all lease project locations, regardless of applicant type, a full lease or rental agreement must be provided, including any exhibits, amendments, or riders. Said lease or agreement must be in the name of the applicant, and it must have a term that is in effect for at least 8 years from the date the application is submitted. Landlord approval of the proposed project must also be included. For project locations pending acquisition, regardless of applicant type, the application must include a fully executed contract of sale in the legal name of the applicant, along with any appendices, attachments, or schedules that are identified in the contract of sale. Please be sure to review the site control guidelines provided later in this webinar. Applicants may submit only one 4CFP application, and only one project location is permitted per application. If more than one application is submitted, only the first application submitted will be reviewed and scored. 4CFP funding must be used for the primary benefit of the applicant's eligible child care program. The proposed project location must not be under school district authority, and programs operated at schools, either public or non-public, are excluded from this grant unless the applicant has a segregated lease space and is the primary beneficiary of the project. The project must be shovel-ready and have a budget of at least $500,000 in capital eligible costs. Applicants must demonstrate the ability to obtain all necessary approvals and licenses, registrations, permits to operate the child care program within 6 months of the date the certificate of occupancy is issued upon completion of the construction project. The proposed project must be intended to be used as a child care program for at least 8 years after completion of the grant-funded project. Project locations owned by religious organizations may be eligible so long as the applicant can legally certify that assets or improvements funded with grant proceeds will solely be utilized by the child care program, and that no portion of the project financed with grant proceeds shall be used for any of the following purposes: sectarian instruction or study, a place of devotional activities, a place of religious worship, a facility used primarily in connection with any part of the program of a school or department of divinity for any religious denomination, or the training of ministers or other similar persons in the field of religion. Additionally, these applicants must also certify that the child care program shall be open to all individuals eligible to avail themselves of the child care program without regard to religious affiliation, ethnicity, race, or sexual preference, and the applicant shall take affirmative steps to ensure that information regarding the child care program is widely disseminated to the public, which information shall include a statement that the child care program is funded in whole or in part with public funds, and that the child care program shall be open to all eligible persons without regard to religion, ethnicity, race, or sexual preference. Lastly, if the religious organization itself is the applicant, they must comply fully with all SFS requirements, including the submission of annual IRS and New York State Charities Bureau filings. While prior to the receipt of grant funds, these organizations may have been exempt from such filings, should they receive a 4CFP award, the funding would trigger requisite filings and the inclusion of those documents with their SFS pre-qualification applications. Projects located in facilities to be funded by any tax credit structure, such as new market tax credits, low-income housing tax credits, brownfield tax credits, etc., should review the criteria set forth below. In addition, applicants should refer to the FAQs included with this RFA for additional information and requirements regarding tax credit structures. Applicants involved in a tax credit structure should verify that their project will be segregated from the overall development or redevelopment of the facility to be funded with tax credits, and demonstrate that all the requirements set forth below are satisfied. Site control must be in the legal name of the applicant and not an affiliated entity. All requirements applicable to owned, leased, or to be acquired properties as set forth above must be satisfied. The applicant must be the entity entering into contracts with contractors for capital costs incurred in furtherance of the project. The applicant must be the entity incurring and paying for the capital costs in the first instance, and the grant funds may not be deposited into the tax credit corpus. The proposed project should be located in an area with a current shortage of regulated childcare services, as defined by the Childcare Desert Regional Information included below. Now we'll move on to the project budget. Applicants must submit a completed project budget, which is Section 7 of the 4CFP application. Applicants must clearly demonstrate that their project is fully funded. This will include submitting a completed detailed budget, estimates, quotes, proposals from professional sources, and evidence of additional funding sources if applicable. Project costs to be reimbursed with 4CFP funds cannot be financed through long-term debt, tax credit structures, bonds, or any other long-term financial instruments. Purchases made from a personal account will not be reimbursed. In order to be reimbursed for any of the eligible costs listed, purchases must be made from the program's business account. When completing the project budget portion of the 4CFP application, Section 7, applicants will need to know what tasks are involved in their proposed 4CFP project and how much they will cost to complete. Are there any pre-construction costs like design and engineering? Does the budget include all phases of construction, like site prep, foundation, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, etc.? Are there post-construction costs like fixtures and furniture? Will equipment be part of the overall budget? Does the total budget also account for non-capital or soft costs? The Childcare Capital Construction Funding Program scoring matrix, which is the Appendix 3 of the RFA, shows how points will be assigned to the budget portion of an application. It will also show how the budget corresponds to the cost estimates and other funding for the project, which we will discuss in later slides. If these sections of an application do not align, the application will receive less points. All 4CFP applications should provide qualified cost estimates for all the components of their proposed project's budget. A qualified estimate is one provided by a professional source on their letterhead detailing the work to be performed and the estimated cost. A total project cost estimate can be generated by an architect, engineer, or general contractor. Alternatively, each segregated task of the project can have its own separate estimate, such as HVAC, electrical, concrete, plumbing, paving, framing, and the like. Websites can be used to quote the proposed costs for things like equipment that can often be purchased via the internet. Be certain that the website pages submitted with the application contains the name of the site as well as the date that the page was saved. All cost estimates should be dated no earlier than April 1st of 2025. All vendors and contractors providing the estimates must be authorized to do business in New York State. If the grant will be utilized for a specific phase of an overall project, the phase must be a standalone project with a recognized capital asset upon completion. All 4CFP applications must verify that they have the financial resources to fully complete their proposed project by demonstrating that they have the funds they may need beyond the grant amount requested. This would include the demonstration of how they will pay for costs that are not eligible to be reimbursed with grant funds. Applicants can use the following to verify that they have the necessary funds in their possession: bank or recently audited financial statements, firmly adopted budgets with the funding line for the project highlighted, board resolutions, donor pledges, agreements, and receipts, paid invoices, evidencing payment of costs by the applicant after April 1st, 2025 for eligible project costs, other grant letters, agreements, and contracts, public or private, bonds or bond anticipation notes, and/or loan agreements, commitment letters, terms, and conditions. Costs cannot have been incurred before April 1st of 2025. All 4CFP projects must be fully completed and all funds fully dispersed by December 31st of 2029. Eligible project costs must be capital and can include, but are not limited to, new construction or renovations to create additional classroom space in an existing location by converting or adapting other rooms to classroom space. For example, demolition of partitions and infilling existing wall construction, modifying existing exits for sufficient egress, installing a diaper change area for new infant or toddler classrooms. Create or improve areas for indoor or outdoor gross motor and/or multi-purpose space. Improve egress or access, either interior or exterior, for children with limited or no mobility. Create age or height appropriate bathroom facilities and/or in-classroom hand washing sinks or changing areas. Health and safety renovations such as security, fire protection, nurse stations, sick child areas, and kitchen or food preparation areas. Doors, windows, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, roofing, fencing, sidewalks, and parking areas. And then architect design and engineering resulted in stamped construction documents. Ineligible uses of 4 CFP funds include, but are not limited to, real property acquisition, working capital, including funds required to operate a facility such as staff, rent, utilities, internal labor, toys, books, supplies, including classroom supplies, furniture and equipment without a useful life of at least 10 years, playground mulch, grant writing, administration, legal, insurance, and other fees, repairs or maintenance projects, long-term debt including financing of machinery or equipment, and funding all or part of any project where the 4 CFP funds would be utilized as part of an existing or proposed tax credit structure.
We are now going to talk about OCFS guidance. New childcare programs. To obtain an application for a childcare program license or registration, you will be required to take the Child Daycare Orientation. This orientation outlines New York State's requirements for opening a childcare program, and it includes important rules and regulations you will need to know to run your business. If you plan on operating a group daycare center in New York City, please contact the New York City Department of Health. Our network of regional offices can provide you with application material, information about the process of starting a program, and help with understanding legal requirements. In addition to regional offices, we also have CCR&Rs, which are known as the Child Care Resource and Referral Agencies. They also provide information to new and prospective child care providers. Child Care Licensing Office Communication. Existing childcare programs must maintain contact with the Child Care Licensing Office to remain compliant with all necessary approvals, licenses, registrations, or permits to continue to operate the child care program. New childcare programs are encouraged to contact the Child Care Licensing Office to discuss licensing, registration, or permitted requirements so that the plans reflect these requirements. Within 60 days of receiving an award letter, all awardees must submit the Child Care Licensing Sign-Off Form to OCFS. This form is confirmation that all awardees have established or are maintaining contact with the Child Care Licensing Office. And this form will be available on the OCFS website no earlier than May 1st, 2026. And yes, the submission of this form will be required prior to receiving a grant disbursement agreement. Annual certification to OCFS. Grantees will be required to submit an annual certification to the Office of Children and Family Services for a minimum of 8 years, beginning the first year after the grant-funded project has been completed, as defined as the date the certificate of occupancy is issued upon completion of the construction project, attesting the following representations. The grantee continues to operate as a child care program. The grantee has all necessary approvals, licenses, registrations, or permits to operate the child care program. The grantee maintains a willingness to accept families in receipt of child care assistance, and the grantee is in compliance with the provisions of the Act and the Grant Disbursement Agreement, also known as the GDA. The annual Child Care Capital Construction Funding Grantee Reporting Form will be available on the OCFS website.
Now we'll go over the guidelines for submitting a complete application. On this slide, you'll see an application checklist. These are the items that must be included in order to have a successful application. These items include pre-qualification in the statewide financial system for all not-for-profit corporations, a 4 CFP application, which is Appendix 1, Detailed project description attached to the 4CFP application, including location, Section 2, purpose, and project impact, Section 4. Site control documentation, which can include a certificate of municipal site control, deed, rental or lease agreement, contract of sale, all with any reference or related attachments. Construction feasibility documentation and project budget, Section 7 of the 4CFP application, which includes a completed detailed budget, estimates, quotes, proposals from professional sources, and evidence of additional funding sources if applicable. On the next few slides, we'll focus in on the pre-qualification and New York State grants management system and the statewide financial system. The statewide financial system, otherwise known as SFS, is critical to a state entity's administration of a grant program and a mandatory requirement for any not-for-profit corporations' receipt of New York State public funds. Registration and pre-qualification in New York State's grants management system has been required since 2013. Initially, New York State used the Grants Gateway for this function, but as of January 2024, all grants management functions have been incorporated into the New York State statewide financial system. SFS pre-qualification is used by all state entities to verify that a potential funding recipient meets the minimum state standards for their organization structure, operations, and policies before they can be considered for receipt of public funds. DASNY is required to verify pre-qualification a minimum of 3 times, which includes prior to completing our reviews on a grant project, prior to executing any grant disbursement agreement, and prior to authorizing any reimbursement requests. Not-for-profit corporations must be registered and pre-qualified in the statewide financial system to be eligible to apply for the Childcare Capital Construction Funding Program funds. The first step is to register an organization in SFS. To do this, you would send a complete grants management registration form for SFS vendors and accompanying documentation where required by email to grantsmanagement@its.ny.gov. It can take 5 to 10 business days from the receipt of registration materials to process an organization's registration in SFS, so it is very important that organizations complete this step as soon as possible so they will be able to act on future grant opportunities as soon as they are announced. All organizations are notified by email once the registration is complete. If you need technical assistance with registration, please email the SFS Help Desk at helpdesk@sfs.ny.gov. After registering, not-for-profit corporations must take the next step and apply for pre-qualification. The process allows not-for-profits to address questions and concerns prior to entering a competitive bid process or requesting funding. Not-for-profits are strongly encouraged to begin the pre-qualification process as soon as possible. Pre-qualification includes answering basic questions regarding the organization and uploading key organizational documents. New York State does reserve 5 to 10 business days from the receipt of complete pre-qualification applications to conduct its review. If supplementary information or updates are required, review times will be longer. Due to the length of this time the process could take, it is advised that not-for-profits pre-qualify as soon as possible. Failure to successfully complete the pre-qualification process may result in a grant application being disqualified or delaying an existing grant's processing. Again, for any technical assistance with pre-qualification, please email the SFS Help Desk at helpdesk@sfs.ny.gov. The required questions in the pre-qualification application are used to assess a not-for-profit's organizational capacity, organizational compliance, and organizational integrity. Documents that must be uploaded into SFS include the Certificate of Incorporation or equivalent document such as a charter, DBA certificate if applicable, IRS 501c3 determination letter, IRS 990, audit reviews and findings, CHAR 500 or CHAR 410, board director profile, senior leadership resumes, corporate bylaws, and organizational chart. On this slide, you'll see an example of an email that you may receive through SFS if a pre-qualification application that you submitted requires additional information in order for the state agency to complete their review. There are a variety of resources available to assist with pre-qualification. A complete overview of the policy, questions, and required documents can be found in the Grantee Pre-qualification Manual. A technical training session on how to pre-qualify in SFS was held on December 3rd of 2024. This training session was recorded, and a link to the session is available on this slide. Additional resources, including sample required documentation, can be found in the Helpful Resources section on SFS's Get Pre-Qualified page. And if you are registered in SFS but do not have access to SFS, or if your primary contact is unable to reset your password, you can contact the SFS Help Desk at helpdesk@sfs.ny.gov. Now we'll move on to understanding site control. Site control is evidence that proves an applicant has sufficient authorization to undertake their proposed project and control the proposed project location to ensure they will be able to utilize the asset developed or improved by the capital funding for the expected useful life of the project. Site control should always be in the applicant's full legal name, the same name that is on file with the IRS and the incorporation documentation filed with New York State. A deed with the legal name of the organization as the owner is the perfect site control documentation. Outright ownership is the ultimate evidence of control over the project location. If a deed's age makes it either unreadable or difficult to ascertain the property location, applicants must include a letter from their attorney stating that the deed provided is, in fact, for the location listed on the application and should be submitted with the deed as part of the application packet. For all lease project locations, regardless of applicant type, a full lease with the applicant's legal name as tenant that meets the following requirements can demonstrate site control. The full lease or rental agreement, including any exhibits, amendments, or riders, or the application will not be deemed an eligible application. Lease facilities must have a minimum term of a full 8 years remaining on the lease at the time of the application. For example, a term extending to at least 2034 for applications submitted in 2026. The term of the lease will be verified during the 4CFP scoring and review of the application and verified prior to the execution of the grant disbursement agreement. Tenants must also include their landlord's approval letter for the proposed project with their 4CFP application. The approval letter must be signed and on the landlord's or realty company's letterhead. If a municipality owns their project location, they can submit a completed certificate of municipal site control with their application. This certificate is Appendix 2 of the application appendices. If a municipality leases their project location, they will need to submit their lease or other site control documentation. On this slide, you'll see common site control documentation errors that have disqualified competitive grant applications in the past, and you should review all the information that we just presented and in the RFA and the FAQs to ensure that you avoid these common site control documentation errors. Some of the examples include that they state on their application that the site control did not apply to them, they provided a lease amendment but not the actual lease, provided only the first page, not the entire document, provided an option to have a lease if they received the grant funding, provided a lease with different address than the project location, provided a lease with different entity as the tenant, provided a lease with the term that doesn't meet the minimum requirements, 8 years for this 4CFP opportunity. They say that they would get an actual lease if it was really necessary, provided a board resolution to take out a mortgage but no deed, provided a parcel map but no deed, provided a receipt for payment of insurance but no deed, provided a contract of sale for a future date but it wasn't signed, provided a mortgage statement but no deed, provided an opportunity for a tax waiver but no deed, provided a deed with different entity as owner, and or provided a deed where the applicant organization actually transferred the property to another entity. Now we'll get into the actual 4CFP application submission. You should start your application now. Please do not wait until the last minute to prepare and submit your application. Not-for-profit corporations must be registered and pre-qualified in SFS before they can apply. Gather the information you will need for your application, such as site control, cost estimates, additional funding sources. Double-check your application before you submit it. Did you complete every section? Did you use any additional sheets for any portion of your application? Are they clearly labeled? Are your attachments ready to be attached to your application? For example, are they saved as PDFs? Did you save it? It's a fillable PDF, so please be sure to save your document, then print to see if all your information is on the form. Did you sign the application? Have you named each and every document that you will submit with your application? Examples are listed below. 4CFP applications must be submitted by email to childcare@dasny.org. Please be sure to include 4CFP application and the name of the applicant in the email subject line. File size limit cannot exceed 112 megabytes for messages outside Microsoft data centers and 150 megabytes between Microsoft users. If your email system secures your attachments, please be sure to grant access to the childcare@dasny.org email. Anything sent to a different email address received via postal delivery or fax will not be accepted, and no notification will be provided to the applicant. The application submission period for 4 CFP applications is from February 2nd, 2026 through March 13th, 2026. All 4 CFP applications must be submitted no later than 11:59 p.m. on March 13th, 2026. 4 CFP applications submitted after the due date will not be considered. On this slide, you'll see an example for a CFP application email. Next, we'll go over the scoring matrix. Please be sure to read and review the 4 CFP scoring matrix before and after you complete a Childcare Capital Construction Funding Program application. The scoring matrix outlines what the 4 CFP scoring and review team will be looking for in an application. This answer sheet clearly outlines what will pass and fail an application in the eligibility review. It will also outline the point value of every application category and what will garnish the most points for a submitted application. Before you submit your application, see if you have included what will earn each section the most points. Next, we'll go over the 4 CFP application evaluation, which is RFA Section 4. As outlined in the 4 CFP scoring matrix, Appendix 3, all submitted applications will be reviewed for the following eligibility. Not-for-profit corporations must be pre-qualified through the New York State statewide financial system and the legal name of the applicant on file with the Department of State and IRS at the time the application is submitted. Eligible entities as defined by Section 2.2 of the RFI. Eligible project locations as defined by Section 2.4 of the RFI. Eligible projects as defined by Section 2.5 of the RFI. And eligible project costs as defined by Section 2.7 of the RFI. After passing the eligibility review, all applications will be categorized by region of state, either DCC, GDC, or SACC, and if they are a municipality as defined in the RFA. OCFS and DASNY will then score each application based on the following. Project viability. DASNY will review the applications and score for compliance with the RFA and bond eligibility, site control, project cost estimates, as well as verification that sufficient funds exist to complete the project as described. Project impact. OCFS will score and evaluate the qualitative aspects of the program, as well as review the proposed number of childcare slots. And project need. OCFS will score based on the childcare desert level of the proposed project, as well as the number of slots created and the critical need of childcare slots identified and addressed within the application. Next, we'll go over Advancement and Grant Disbursement Agreement, otherwise known as the GDI. This is RFA Section 5. After 4 CFP awardees have been announced, DASNY will notify all applicants as to the results of their application scoring and review. Award recipients will be sent an award letter detailing what will be required prior to DASNY forwarding a Grant Disbursement Agreement, or GDI. Please see Section 5.2 of the RFI. The following reviews will be undertaken for all awardees. Grants Management System Prequalification if applicable, Grantee Questionnaire, Financial Review, State Environmental Quality Review, otherwise known as SEEKR, State Historic Preservation Office, otherwise known as SHPO, if applicable, Site Control, Certifications, Bond, and Tax Council Review. As noted in the RFA, as part of DASNY's administration of 4 CFP, DASNY will undertake a statutory, financial, environmental, and bond and tax council review. DASNY will also determine whether required regulatory approvals have been obtained, as well as verify that sufficient site control remains in place. Awardees will be required to, at minimum, complete a grantee questionnaire, project certification, and grantee certification. DASNY will also verify that OCFS has received the awardee's licensing office sign-off form for the child care program. As part of the documentation review and in conjunction with the financial review, determination will be made as to the bond funding eligibility of the various project costs identified in the 4 CFP project budget. Awardees may be asked for additional information beyond what was provided in their application in order to determine both eligibility and the economic life of the project and its components. DASNY will undertake a financial review of the project to be funded by the 4 CFP award. The financial review ensures that state funding will be utilized on its own or in conjunction with other funding sources to finance a fully functional capital project. As set forth in Section 2.6 of the RFA, the full project amount must be secured. Established project budget must be substantiated by recent estimates, quotes, and/or proposals from qualified professionals and/or vendors. This includes estimates, quotes, and/or proposals that are dated within 1 year of DASNY's review. Evidence of additional funding, if applicable. If costs have been incurred, we would expect to see an expenditure report for the costs that have been paid to date. This report should include project tasks, vendors, invoice and check numbers, dates of costs incurred, and total amount incurred. If the grant will be utilized for a phase of an overall project, the phase must be a standalone project with a recognized capital asset upon completion. Grant funding cannot be used for costs that are not capital in nature or are otherwise ineligible under the 4CFP. DASNY's Office of Environmental Affairs will review each 4CFP project in accordance with SECRA. The qualifying applicant may be asked to complete certain forms and return them to DASNY. All projects must undergo State Environmental Quality Review, otherwise known as SECR. There are different SECR classifications, such as Type 1, Type 2, and Unlisted. According to Section 1409 of the Historic Preservation Act, consultation with SHPO is required if the project location is historical. DASNY will forward a grant disbursement agreement, otherwise known as the GDI, to the awardee once the aforementioned reviews, as applicable, have been completed. The GDA is the contract between the awardee and DASNY. The awardee will review and sign the GDA, which will then be forwarded to the awardee's attorney for review. Upon the return of the GDA to DASNY, DASNY will review the GDA for completeness and accuracy, which will include verification that the budget has not changed, or that a valid rationale is given for the budget change, and the change does not materially affect the approved project or timeline, the exhibits are properly completed, an appropriate opinion to council has been provided as required by Exhibit B of the GDA, and no other issues have arisen that would affect the status of the grant. Once this review is complete, DASNY will arrange for the execution of the GDA. The GDA will become effective upon execution of the GDA by both the awardee and DASNY. The GDA will be dated the date of the execution of the GDA by DASNY. All 4CFP GDAs executed pursuant to this RFA will expire on December 31st, 2029. No extensions will be permitted. This slide includes very important information. Due to the anticipated high demand of 4CFP funding and in keeping with the intent to invest in time-sensitive projects, all 4CFP awardees are expected to fully comply with and complete all required reviews within 12 months from the date of their 4CFP award letter. Failure to meet this deadline will constitute forfeiture of the 4CFP funding opportunity, and the funds will be returned to the 4CFP pool to be made available to the next successful qualifying 4CFP applicant. A 4CFP awardee who is subject to such forfeiture would be eligible to submit a new 4CFP application in future 4CFP funding opportunities. On this slide, you'll see the Childcare Construction Funding Program estimated timeline. These are just estimates, but this will give you an idea of when we expect to reach each point in the timeline. The application submission period is February 2nd, 2026 to March 13th, 2026. Application scoring will be between March 16th, 2026 to April 20th, 2026. Awards will be announced no earlier than May 4th, 2026. DASNY's initial notification to qualifying applicants should be between May 5th, 2026 and May 8th, 2026. Qualifying applicants will be submitting documentation to DASNY, and again, qualifying applicants will be given 12 months to complete the DASNY review from the date that their award letter is dated. These dates will be May 5th, 2026 to April 5th, 2027. The DASNY application review completion could be anywhere between May 26th, 2026 and then May 5th, 2027. GDAs to applicants could be between June 10th, 2026 to July 31st, 2027. GDAs returned by applicants and executed by DASNY could be anywhere between June 10th, 2026 to August 31st, 2027. Payment requisitions submitted for reimbursements to DASNY could be between June 10th, 2026 and November 15th, 2029. And then the deadline for all projects to be completed and the last day for reimbursements to be paid to awardees will be December 31st, 2029. If you still have any questions on the Childcare Capital Construction Funding Program RFA, you can submit all questions via the SurveyMonkey link that's in the RFA as well as included on this slide. Please be sure to submit questions no later than 5 p.m. on December 19th, 2025. Responses to all survey questions received by December 19th will be posted on the DASNY website by January 16th, 2026. Technical issues with sending an application may be submitted to childcare@dasny.org, but there is no guarantee that an issue can be resolved in the final hours of the submission window.
We have now made it to the end of our webinar, and I just wanted to say thank you for your interest in the Childcare Capital Construction Funding Program, and good luck to all of our applicants.